Hallelujah. As I said in the previous video on the topic, taking ownership of your possession, you must understand that the promise of God is a different thing, and taking ownership of God's promise is also something different. Most of us used to wait for God's promises to come to pass. Most of us used to wait for the prophecy of God to come to pass. Surely the word of God shall come to pass. But there is something that you must know, that you have a role to play in the fulfillment of God's promises. You have a role to play in the fulfillment of good revelations and prophecy that were being said about you. Don't sit down. Don't wait and say it as the Lord has said it, it will come to pass, and you are not playing your role. You must understand that you have a role to play in the fulfillment of God's promises concerning your life. If God has given you a revelation, if God has given you a promise, that promise and a revelation is just like a map to where you are going. It's just like a guide and direction towards your path in life. Now listen, for that direction or for that promise to come to pass, you must take a move, you must take an action, you must make a decision, and you must take responsibility. Now let's go to the book of Genesis 17 verse 8. You must understand that Adam did not pray for land of inheritance. It was the promise of God. God said he's going to give the land to him and to his inheritance. I don't know if you are getting me. It was the promise of God. But you must understand, if we go to the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 1, verse 8, God asked them to go in and possess that land. If you go to Deuteronomy 1:8, you understand. The Lord told them that this land is ahead of you. This land is in front of you. This land is facing you, but you must go and possess it. Many of us have been sitting down, waiting for that promise to come to pass by itself. No, it's not like that. I'm sorry to tell you that there are some prophecy that will not fulfill themselves. There are some prophecy that will not fulfill itself, except you go ahead, except you make a decision, except you take responsibility, except you take an action for some prophecies to come to pass. If not, you may be there blaming yourself or blaming God. That is it not God that have said it? Why is it not coming to pass? My question to you, what role have you played for the promises or for the promise to come to pass in your life? If you go to Psalm 2, verse 7 to 8, God also talked about inheritance. And there was instruction that we should go and possess them. Now, my question to you, what shall you do for those promises to come to pass in your life? What are you going to do? What are the rules that you need to play? There are three things that you must bear in heart, or there are three things that you must observe for God's promises to come to pass in your life. Number one, you must be obedient. Hallelujah. You must be what? You must be obedient. For every prophetic instruction, for every promises, for every prophecy, there is an instruction that is attached. That is one thing that we often ignore. There is an instruction that is attached to every promises. That instruction is a role that you need to play. That instruction is something that you need to do. That instruction is something that you must not do for that prophecy or for that promises to come to pass. Most times, we just take hold of the prophecy. Most times, we take hold of the promises, but we ignore the instruction that is attached to the promises. And once you failed to obey the instructions, or once you fail to carry out the instructions, there is tendency that the promises may not come to pass. And there are some of us that we do obey, but our obedience used to be half obedience. Listen to me very well. Every half obedience is the same thing as disobedience in the sight of God. Now, this is a revelation to you. This is a promise to you. This is a prophecy to you, that they saw you, that you are traveling out before the end of this year. And the instruction that follows is that you must do this, or you must not do this. It may be that you must be holy. It may be that you have to be prayerful. It may be that you have to make some decisions for those things to come to pass. But most times we often ignore the instruction and wait for the prophecy to fulfill themselves. I might be wrong, but I believe that prophecies doesn't fulfill themselves. We play rules for prophecies to come to pass. Number 2, for the promises of God to come to pass in your life, you need to be courageous. What do we mean by being courageous?